Hi guys, this is Mary Hebert. I've had a lot of requests lately about doing a watch me edit tutorial for this image. So I thought I would put that together for you today. This image was not for a client, this is my daughter. I think it kind of goes without saying that I would have preferred to get this image right in camera. I would have saved a ton of work and wouldn't have had to put so much effort into the final edit. Unfortunately, that's not realistic and life happens, and sometimes we end up with images that look like this. Of course, if your images are looking like this more often than not, then you really need to sit down and think about your settings and if they're where they should be at that point. As you can see, this whole session was a train wreck. The color is really spotty. It was the worst time of day ever. I didn't realize that flowers like to face the sun, and I like to backlight my images, so it was impossible to have the flowers in the picture without having the sun in her face. So I had a reflector to try to even out the shadows, but it was also really windy. So for this image, my reflector had blown over. She was an absolute brat the entire time, and this is one of the only images I got where she actually looked at the camera and wasn't like sticking out her tongue or doing something bad. So this is what I went with. The only thing I've done to this image since importing it was to up the exposure. This was actually where I started. I upped the exposure just enough so I wasn't clipping any whites in the background, because the background's actually well exposed, like it's not bad. I had the reflector here and she was kind of under a little bridge, so she was in the shade, and that's why there's such a big difference between the background and the foreground. But basically, I increased the exposure a little bit, and that is pretty much all I did in Lightroom. I didn't really change anything. I knew the white balance was going to have to be fixed. She's very blue, but I wanted to do it locally and just adjust the white balance on her skin without affecting some of this background, because I think the flowers white balance is fine. I don't want them to look too yellow. I don't want the grass to look yellow. So when I fix the white balance, I'm just going to do it on her. So I would go ahead and open this right in Photoshop. So Command E is going to open it in Photoshop for me. My poor child has been forced to take photographs against her will since the day she was born. So she's not very cooperative. She's 4 years old now. This image is about 1.5 years old or so. So it's kind of an old image. And so I'm probably not going to remember exactly how I edited it the first time. I can just show you how I would go about editing it if I were to do it today. And the very first thing I would do is I would pull up a levels layer, which I'm going to do by going to the little circle with the squiggly line through it here, and I'm going to choose levels. And I'm doing that because I just want to get an idea of the global histogram of the entire image. I can see the blacks are pretty heavy, but the highlights have some room because we want them just barely touching, so they have some room to go down. I'm going to look at my midtones and see if there's anything I can do to brighten those up. I like that a little bit better. So I would start out there, and then I'm going to flatten my image, which is something I do all the time. I know it's not always the best way to go, but I flatten a lot. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick mask, and I'm just going to do it on her. Because I just want to increase the exposure on her. I don't want to affect the background at all. So I'm going to make sure my brush tool is selected by hitting the B button, and then I'm going to make sure it's at 100% opacity, which you can do by hitting the 0. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it'll be easier to paint on her. And now I'm going to hit Q. And I know it's activated because this turned green. I believe on yours the default will be red. I can't remember, I changed it at some point. But so I'm going to go ahead and just paint this green. If you're painting and it's not showing up anything, it's because you're on the wrong color paintbrush. So you need to be on the black brush. You don't have to be super careful when you're doing a quick mask because it kind of has like the content aware around it. So it'll do a pretty good job of covering enough. So just like that is perfect. And now I'm going to hit the Q again, and it's going to show me that my mask is now activated. All this stuff that's outside of the mask, I really am not worried about. It's going to be fine. Now I'm going to go down to levels. I'm going to create another levels layer. And now I have a histogram showing me only the lights and darks on her, not the background. So now I can see, looking at this, I have a lot more room that I need to increase my highlights on just her. And you can kind of play around with your midtones and see if you want to lighten those. You can play around with your darks a little. It's showing a little bit of dark clipping. But you can see as I do this that she's looking more blue. You might be able to see. It depends on how well calibrated your image or your computer is, but if it's calibrated, she's going to start looking pretty blue in these images, because once you start fixing the exposure, the true white balance kind of starts showing up. So this is looking better. I'm seeing a little bit of haloing around her where this brightness is behind her. You could use a black brush and just paint that to make sure it all stays the same. Okay. So kind of continuing on, I'm just going to keep increasing my highlights here until, looking at her, I'm seeing the results I want. And it's saying that it's clipping a little bit of white, and I can tell already that that is here in her dress. So I can zoom in, and with a black brush at like 20 opacity or so, go ahead and like paint that area back so that it's no longer being included in the clipping mask. You can even paint it on at like 10%, like really low, just so that it's not quite affecting that as much, and then, I mean, it really won't matter. And so when I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm creating more contrast on her. So not only is she going to be better exposed, but our eye is going to travel to her before it looks at other things. All right, let's see if we can bring her down a tiny little bit more. Good. All right, I'm going to just kind of touch up some of this and see if, make sure it's included in that clipping mask. All right, I'm happy with that for now. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this image. Now I'm going to do a color balance layer, because I'm going to try to even out some of this blue in her skin. So I'm going to go to layer, color balance, and I'm going to start leaning more towards the yellows than the blues, and a little bit more towards the reds than the cyans. She actually has a little bit of red in her hair, just a little tiny bit. And the white balance on her is kind of uneven. Her arms are a lot more blue than her face, probably because you're getting some color cast off of this dress. So once I get her face to where I want it to be, what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and I'll flatten that. I mean, you can keep it open, it's up to you, but I'm going to flatten it just because I like to keep things organized. I'm going to do another color balance layer, and I'm going to, just looking at her arms in this image, going to try to even out some of that blue tone. by increasing the reds and the yellows. That doesn't look too bad. And now I'm going to hit Command I, which is going to invert my layer. And now I'm going to kind of zoom in a little bit and look at this layer closer. And with my white brush at 100%, it's at 10%, so I'm going to hit the 0. I'm just going to paint this on her arms. And maybe at like 30%, paint a little bit on her chin where she's got a little bit of that blue color cast. And then I'm just going to kind of back up a little bit and take a look at that and see how it looks, because you want it to look right. That looks pretty good. Still a tiny bit of blue. She's so blue. Let's see. That's a lot warmer though right there. All right. So I'm done with this. I'm gonna flatten that. I want to do a little bit of work on this background. I want to get rid of this pole or whatever it was. We were like right on the side of the road, so it's probably a stop sign. And I want to fill in some of this area with the yellow flowers. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to hit Command J to duplicate my layer. I'm going to create a layer mask by hitting the mask button, which is the rectangle with the circle in the middle. I'm going to choose a black brush at 100% opacity. And I'm going to start off just by painting the areas with the issues I want to fix. It's going to be anything back here. And you can see it looks like nothing is happening. That's because the image below the mask is exactly the same as the image above the mask. So you're not going to see anything different right away. Next, I'm going to go to the Move tool. I'm going to unlock my back layer. And I'm going to use the Move tool to move my background up. Let's see. Now, obviously, I don't want two heads on my child, so we'll take just this part out for now, and we'll paint in the original and work on just the other spots here. And, oops, Command Z is your backup button. If you ever go too far and you need to take a step back, hit Command Z. And if you hit Command Control Z, you can keep, or Command Option Z, I always say Control, you can keep stepping back. So I am going to go ahead and use this brush. Let me get rid of these strands of hair that are blowing in the wind first. Okay. I'm going to use this brush to paint the background a little bit so that it looks like the flowers are extending back further. And I don't want this darkness here because I want to keep the bulk of the same so it looks like it was, done at the same depth field of vision. I can't talk today. All right, so that's not too bad. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. I'm going to take care of this one little part here where this got duplicated. You can just choose from anywhere. And now I'm going to Command J. I'm going to go to my background, unlock it, and I'm going to hit Command T, which is going to activate transformation for me. I'm going to right click and I'm going to do flip horizontal and then hit the enter button to shut off transformation. And what that did is it basically flipped my image behind here. So now this side is over here and that's what I wanted. So I'm going to go back to the top, I'm going to make a layer mask. And with a black brush at 100%, I'm going to paint in some of these areas over here so that they match the areas on the other side. And it doesn't look quite so much like they've been like cloned or stamped from the image below from this area. So that looks pretty good. Now we can flatten this, and for the next project is I want to get rid of this stuff here. So I am going to Command J to duplicate my layer. I'm going to do the same exact thing I've been doing. I'm going to create a layer mask and stay on the black brush. I'm going to paint off this stuff here. And then I'm going to find a place that I can steal pixels from. So I'm going to go to my background and unlock it, go to the move tool, and I'm going to move it around, and I'm going to see where a good place is for me to steal some pixels. This isn't too bad, but we don't want it to look quite so much like it was stamped from the side. So let's see, I'm going to pull up a little bit, and then I'm going to hit Command T to activate that transformation again. And holding down the shift button, I'm just going to pull the side up so I can kind of add some variety to the background and it doesn't look quite so like stale or copied from the other side. Okay, hit the enter button again to undo the transformation. And now, or unactivate. I'm gonna scoot in really close here because I want to make sure that there's none of this stuff left. So I'm gonna go around this area, and this is also exactly what I do to get rid of flyaway hairs. So this will work for two ways for us. If you feel like you're getting some on her, you can just flip the mask, go back. You just want to try to avoid a halo, because the haloing is what really gives away that you took pixels from someplace else and moved them. And so when I'm painting this, I can just get rid of these hairs altogether. Although I'm going to start getting into closer up stuff, so I won't go too far down there. I'll go up here, get rid of this one. She's starting to show up right here, so I'll paint that back on. I think the batteries in my mouse are about to die because they keep jumping around like that. That's usually a telltale sign. All right. Take that last part out. Okay. See if we can fade some of this a little bit better. And that's okay for right now. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. And now I'm going to take my healing brush tool, and I'm just going to use it to get rid of some of these like random hairs. Yeah, it's being so slow today. I think it's my mouse. Get rid of this stuff down here. Blend it in a little bit more. I'm going to get rid of this anyways, so I'm not too worried about what that looks like at this moment. There's some random hair strands up in here. So get rid of those. And then this whole problem area we'll get rid of. I have to like wait for my mouse to catch up with what I'm doing. And this background is like, it's pretty forgiving because it's kind of abstract and doesn't have a lot of detail to it, so I can get away with kind of moving stuff around more than I would be able to if it was like in my studio. Once again, this is not an image I would usually take. This is something that I would usually have a lot more control over, and I almost always use off-camera flash, so this was one of the few times I did not, and this is what happened. Alright, so I'll fix that up a little bit more in a second. So let's back up here. Even though we warmed her up a ton, she's still looking really blue, especially since my eyes just focused on all this yellow. So we're going to fix that again in a moment. Next, I want to kind of reevaluate where my exposure is in this. And I'm going to go to a levels layer. And it's not bad, but I feel like my background is a little underexposed. So I'm going to kind of bring up the highlights and midtones a little bit. That looks better to me. But I don't really want them on her, so I'm going to go ahead and paint them out off of her. Ooh, that's a healing brush tool. Not a paintbrush. Okay. I want them just on the background. There we go. Alright, I'm going to finish playing around with her hair a little bit. I'm going to flatten this. And this is how I get rid of flyaways. Someone asked me the other day if I could do a little tutorial about that. But, so this is how I would do it. I'm going to Command J to duplicate my layer. I'm going to come in really close, and with a black brush, I am going to paint this off. Ooh, you have to make a layer mask first. I'm going to paint this off of her hair a little bit. And like all of this messy stuff, I think I took it all out because it just looked like a rat's nest. Okay, so now I'm going to unlock my background. I'm going to go to my move tool, and I'm just going to pull down because I know that that's going to blend in pretty well. Let me see. This way a little till I find an area that I think looks the best. That actually looks pretty good. Go back to my black brush, go in here nice and close, and now I'm going to do a better job of getting rid of the rest of these little flyaways. Let's see, make it really close. And the one way to really try to make this look realistic is you want to try to have a little bit of a hard line. Because if it's a soft line, it kind of looks like hair doesn't do that. Like hair, you know, kind of has a hard line to it of where it starts and stops. So, and then I'm gonna go even further with playing with this a little bit later with Liquify, which is what I did the first time, I'm sure. Let's see. There we go. A couple little spots back here. We can just make a bigger brush and kind of include some of that in. So that looks pretty good. Going to, let's see, we might be able to get away with painting some of these out too now. Yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna do the same exact thing over here. Get in really close so I can see a little bit better. I'm not even gonna attempt to get the hair out of her face because there's just too much of it. She's got a lot of hair. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and play around with this so I can, like I said, kind of get that hard line that I want. And that's just something that I've kind of discovered over time of editing, is that that's what's going to make it look the most realistic. You can toggle your brushes sizes, Command Z on that one. To increase or decrease your brush size, just hit the bracket buttons. And that is an easy shortcut that you can do to increase or decrease your brush size without having to go up here and manually put in the number. Okay. There's just like a few random stray hairs over here I want to get rid of. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna flatten it. And you can see that there's some jagged areas here. That's not a big deal. I'm gonna grab my brush, my healing brush tool, and I'm just going to blend those a little bit better. Just around the edge, so that it looks like it's a nicer transition than it is right now. Go, get rid of some of this dark area here. It went right through her because my mouse is dying. Okay, not perfect, but you get the idea. All right, so now we're here. Let's see. Before I go into liquify and do anything else, I want to fix the white balance again because I feel like she's still blue. So I'm going to go to a color balance level. And once again, I'm going to add yellows. The more I look at this yellow background, the more I see the blue in her skin. So Command I, and with a black brush, or a white brush, sorry, I'm just going to paint on her skin in just this area so that we're not getting the background, because the background's fine. It's just her that's cold. Alright, that looks better to me. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to, let's go to a brightness and contrast layer. Think about increasing the brightness on her just a little bit. And then we'll see what the contrast looks like. It's not too bad. So now I hit Command I to invert that, and I'm just going to paint that on her, just on her skin. The brightness might even be a little high. Take it down to like a 4. It's not bad. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to do a little bit of dodging and burning on her, and I just want to do a levels layer. And I like to start out with my darks, so I'm going to make my darks really prominent. Don't need my blacks that high. Okay. And now I'm going to Command I to invert it. I'm going to make my brush kind of small. I'm going to put my brush at 20% opacity by hitting the 2. And I'm just going to use this to kind of darken the areas that, let me increase this to maybe 60%, that's better. Darken the areas that have shadow, just because I'm trying to make her skin pop a little bit more where it was so flat with the lighting. I'm gonna go around here, her shoulders, kind of the areas that would be in shadow, and I'm just gonna kind of exaggerate that shadow a little bit more. So we can toggle that on and off. So you can see what it looks like. Let me back out a little bit. And I might even turn it down a tiny hair. And then I'm going to take another levels layer. And this one is going to be my highlights. I'm getting the light and everything. Add a tiny little bit of black so that you don't lose too much shadow, and then Command I. And now I'm just going to take my brush the same way I just did that, and I'm just going to paint where there would be highlights on her skin. Just to try to get her to pop a little bit more. Give her skin a little bit more contrast that it lost by the flat lighting in the shade. And I like to also go over like the areas in her hair that would have been highlighted by the sun. I like to bring them out a little bit more. It just, I don't know, it makes the hair look more realistic to me, like more highlighted and like it's got life to it. So I'll show you if I toggle on and off here. I can take my darks and actually lower them a little bit more. They don't have to be quite so dark, but there and there. And then maybe even a little bit more. I'm also going to take these lights while I have them here, and using my brush tool, let me just paint a little bit in the background just to make it a little bit lighter around her and in just the foreground here, so that it matches a little bit better. It's got a little bit more consistency. All right, that looks good. Toggle it on and off. Better. I'm gonna flatten that for now. I might even, let's see, we might even do a levels layer and increase the exposure just for these flowers in the front. If I Command I and I paint them on just here, and I've got this one little thing right there that's kind of bothering me, so I'm going to get that out of here in a second. Alrighty. Let's see. I might just crop it out. If you hold down the shift key, it's going to lock your crop area. I want to go outside my crop and just select there. All right, getting there. I want to do, let's see. I'm going to do some lightening of her eyes real quick. You can see she's a little bit grainy. That's because we had to increase the exposure so much. That's noise created by increasing your exposure in post. So I can run Noiseware, which is how I would get rid of that, or you could increase the luminance in Lightroom. It really doesn't matter that much. There's a couple different ways you can do eyes. The way I would do it for these ones is I would do, let's see, I think I'm going to create a new layer. I have to write everything down because I just make actions of everything and then I forget how to actually do it. All right, so I'm just going to make a blank layer. I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. I want it filled with 50% gray, and hit OK. And now I'm going to change under here where it says normal, I'm going to change the blending mode to overlay. I'm going to hit the D key to make sure that my my black and white brushes are set the way I want them to. And then I'm going to change the opacity of my brush. First I have to select brush. I'm going to change it to 10%. So I'm going to hit 1 and I'm going to make it really small. And now this is just kind of a way to dodge and burn your eyes. To bring out the white parts, I'm going to paint with a white brush. And to bring out some of the darks, I'm going to paint with my black brush. And you can paint anywhere that's white. If there's here that you wanted to kind of give a little bit more volume to, you could. And then I would take my black brush and I would make it really small and I would just kind of hit some of the spots that I wanted to really be black or darker. Just around the outsides, around the pupil a little bit. She's got kind of greenish hazel brown kind of eyes. I don't really know what color they are. So kind of pretty to bring out all of the different colors in there. All right, so now I'm gonna back out and look at it because I don't want to go overboard, and I always go overboard, so that looks crazy. So I'm going to take that and I'm gonna drop my opacity really low. And I'm just gonna do it enough so that my eyes are brightened. That looks pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna fix up her hair a little bit, and I'm gonna do that. You can Command J to duplicate your layer. I'm gonna go up to Filter and go to Liquify. And this is kind of how I accentuate the hair a little bit. I'm gonna get a brush here, and I'm just gonna kind of move around some of the outsides of the hair, add more volume to it, add a little more movement to it. Sometimes I bring out her curls more. You can see I tried to curl her hair and she was probably extremely uncooperative, so I gave up. And that also helps to kind of take away some of this edge that was showing up from us covering up those flyaways earlier. So let me look at that. Not too bad. I'm gonna hit OK. That looks so much better. And now, one thing I really want to do is I just feel like this needs a little bit of lightening and contrast just around her. So let me hit, make sure I hit B at 100% and then hit Q to activate that quick mask. And I'm going to kind of select a little bit of a circle outside of her, kind of like this. I'm going to hit the Q again, and then I'm going to go to levels. And I've got to be careful of how much I alter here because we're going to start going and losing some white information. I just want to lighten up a little tiny bit so that when you look at her, your eye goes to her and not competes for the background. Let's see. Didn't do much, but it added a little bit of contrast so you can see it more in her face. I don't want those to be too much. Yeah, that's good. And then I kind of want to do the same thing. I want to flatten this. Hit Q, and this time I'm just going to select kind of the background here. Hit Q again and get a levels layer. And this time I'm going to kind of darken it a little bit because I want your eyes to go right towards her. You could add kind of a matte finish by changing the output down here if you wanted to. I'm not a matte person, I don't usually do that, but just thought I'd show you. So that is good there. I might do a little bit of a soft light layer in the background. And the way I do that is I go to levels and change normal to soft light, and then I decrease it to like a teeny tiny percent. Let's see, 8%. That's not bad. And then I usually take it off of her skin because it does push your reds up a little bit and can add a little bit more red to her skin. That wouldn't really be a problem with her because she was blue anyways, but I'll show you. So it just adds a little bit of contrast to the background. And then I might even do like a vibrance layer and increase a little bit of the vibrance of the colors and a little bit of the saturation. And then you could either Command I and just paint it on the background, or in this case I would actually just paint it off of her because it's just a small amount here. And then let's take a look at that. Looks good. I also usually run Portraiture on my images. Command J, filter, Portraiture, which this is a plugin that you have to purchase. These are the settings my Portraiture stays at all of the time, so if you want to screenshot that and steal them, that's fine, I don't mind. And then I'm just going to paint it on her skin at the opacity that I want it to be. So choose a black brush. I usually start out at 100% opacity. Ooh. Make it a layer mask first. I paint it on, does that look weird? Oh, because I didn't invert it. Hold on, I'm sorry. Make it a layer mask and then Command I or Control I to invert. And then I'm going to paint it on with a white brush. Just on her skin. And I think the only reason I did decide to edit this image is because I didn't want the whole day to be a complete waste. And I do a calendar for my husband every year for Christmas, and this was an image he liked. So normally I wouldn't go through so much work and trouble just for one image. So that softens my skin a ton. I might not want the opacity that high, so I'll pull back a little bit, but that looks pretty good. All right, and then the other thing I could do is I could Command J and I could do some noise wear, which is also by the same company. And that was just because she had that little bit of noise on her skin. When we looked at it, there was a little bit of those dots. So hit OK. And now I'm going to go in really close because this noise wear is at like a crazy high, and I can like click it on and off and you can see how like smooth it's making everything, but I don't want it quite so smooth, so I'm going to come down on the opacity until I feel like it looks realistic. It's getting rid of some of that noise in there, but it still looks good. And I think that's it. That's all I would do to this image. I don't think I would spend that much more time on it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to message me. You can ask me anything you want. And I'm always open to feedback, so anything you guys want to recommend I do in the future would be great. The only other thing that I think I did in this image before I go real quick is I think I did a hue saturation layer. I click on the layer box up here, go to color range, and click on her dress, and then choose the plus dropper and just kind of keep going until you're sure all of her dress is selected. You can see in the masking box up here that it's doing a good job. It looks like everything is selected there. I'm going to hit OK. I go back to the main panel and I'm going to click on colorize. And now I could change her dress to anything I wanted, but what I really wanted is I just wanted to bring out the teal of it a little bit more, which this didn't work so great because I'm missing a piece down there. So you could go in with the eyedropper and make it perfect, or you could just hit D and use the white brush to paint it in those areas. And then I just I think I just played with the color a little bit to make it pop a little bit more. You can see this part under her arm didn't get selected. I could select that. Just to create a little bit more contrast and make it a blue dress and a green background. I liked it. Let's see. You can lower the opacity and then take your black brush at 100% and just make sure that none of it got on her and changed her color. And none of it got in the background. I'm looking here and I don't see any white selected anywhere in the background, so it doesn't look like it got anywhere else. If I click it again, it just shows I added a little bit more blue to it, so she stood out a little bit more. And that is it. I am going to Command Save and Command Q to quit, and this image is done. If you guys have any questions, please let me know, and thank you as always for watching.